mattered most in innovation this week? Hi, I'm Kaitlin Milliken, Multimedia Editor at Innovation Leader, and we're here to tell you about some news you might have missed that matter most for innovators at large organizations. I'm joined by my colleague, Scott Kirsner, and Alex Slawsby, CEO of Derisk and Strategic Advisor for Innovation Leader. Alex, why don't you kick us off with one piece of news?
Yeah, earlier this week, I was really interested to hear about the creation of a new innovation consultancy called Proto by some folks who've been leaders at the digital agency RGA. And I was particularly interested to hear Proto described as a new disruptive innovation consultancy. And of course, that was intriguing to me. Well, what truly is a new disruptive innovation consultancy? Because the word, right, is thrown around a lot. And the question is, well, what does that really mean? And so, I mean, we know from industries, we know from markets that something that's disruptive truly enters and then takes the leading companies by surprise. They do something that the leading companies can't do or won't do. So there's some kind of asymmetry there. And so when we think about innovation consultancies, and particularly Proto's story, the fact that they say, well, we're stitching together a lot of the capabilities that companies tend to hire out to different firms for, we say that's disruptive. I say, well, what's keeping other innovation consultancies from partnerships or acquisitions or stacking together similar capabilities from strategy to sort of deep dives into innovation to idea generation, scaling up, and all of that. So, I mean, interesting to say that it's truly disruptive, but if you think about networking together a lot of freelancers to solve innovation problems or solving innovation problems through data and analytics, those are two models that might be hard to replicate and compete against by existing players. I'm not sure the Proto approach, while perhaps novel and really interesting, is truly disruptive.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. When I heard them using the word disruptive, I thought well, are they going to be a low-end disruptor? Are they going to undercut on price? Is this a mobile app maybe that you can start? It'd be interesting to think about the Uber approach or the taxi meter approach to, hey, I need someone to drop in for a day of consulting. Can I use my mobile app, to initiate that?
For something to be truly disruptive, it needs to do something that's more attractive to existing customers. So they say, hey, this is actually something that satisfies my needs better than what's satisfying my needs right now. And it could be because it's cheaper or whatever. But also in a way that's really hard for the existing players to replicate. Because if they can simply look at it and go, oh, what you're doing is really cool, we're just going to do it too, then it's not disruptive. It's really sustaining competition. So that's that other piece. And again, I'm not sure what they're doing or going to do that's really going to keep other existing players from doing the same thing.
Well, yeah, I would say, strategy consulting, as you know, and innovation consulting is a pretty established business model now. And so it would really be cool to me to see if they can shake things up and do things differently in a way that creates value for, for customers. There certainly is a lot of need and a lot of pain points out there. The item that I'm picking for this week is Clubhouse. Clubhouse just raised $100 million. They're supposedly at the 5 million or 6 million user threshold. And I've been noticing while Clubhouse really started with a lot of venture capitalists and entrepreneurs from the Silicon Valley region, I've now started to notice some big company folks signing up and starting to participate in conversations there. So I think we're seeing a tipping point where Clubhouse is going from that startup world into more spaces, more topics. The thing that I think is really interesting about Clubhouse and why I've been recommending it to people is, it kind of fills that void we've all been feeling where, we don't go to cocktail parties after work. We don't go to backyard barbecues. We don't go to in-person conferences where you hang out in the lobby with lots of other people. And so it has this nice serendipity, the fluidity, you may have a very loose connection and Clubhouse pings you and says, so-and-so is participating in a conversation about topic X. Do you want to join it? And so it's a nice way to reconnect with people that you're not working with on a day-to-day basis. And it's also only audio oriented. So you don't have to have your camera on and make sure your hair looks good and, stare into the screen like we're all doing right now.
Yeah, Scott, I agree that Clubhouse has impeccable timing with pandemic and the need for connection being so high. I'm also on Clubhouse and I've made so many serendipitous reconnections with folks that I knew in high school who are now really entrenched in Silicon Valley's startup scene. So it's been a really good way to foster those connections.
So Katie, bring us home. What's item number 3 this week?
Yeah, item number 3 has to do with going electric. Car companies are looking at electric vehicles amid changes in Washington. The Biden administration is attempting to restore the federal tax rebate on EVs and are really committed to a new climate direction. Companies like GM have committed to going all electric as soon as 2035. They really drove the point home with the Super Bowl commercial featuring Will Ferrell, and they plan to be zero emissions as soon as 2040. These companies are facing a lot of competition. Right now, 4 out of every 5 electric vehicles are sold by Tesla, so they really need to innovate to break into the market, and they're a little bit late to the game. And I think that really shows the importance of innovating for things down the road and really staying on top of trends in the past, so you're not really fighting to break into a space that one company already has such a strong grip on. On the H3 front, you have United, the airline company, which has been having a tough year and some months in 2021, but they're looking at decreasing their emissions by partnering with the Silicon Valley startup that's making air taxis. So they spent $1 billion to acquire 200 of these air taxis. And the way that's going to decrease emissions is by flying folks from places like Hollywood to LAX, and that'll cut the amount of emissions in half instead of everyone taking their cars and sitting in LA traffic. So that's a longer term bet. It's more forward thinking, but it really shows a dedication to looking at those transformational innovations.
It's so funny, Katie, that you mentioned GM, because I saw that news too. You know, they were at the Consumer Electronics Show in January, showing off all their sexy, you know, the electric Hummer and the electric Cadillac. And I was thinking back to 2004 when I went to visit their R&D site in Detroit. And at that moment, they had just had the EV1, you know, one of their first electric vehicles, really flop, and you know, it didn't have a lot of mojo behind it, and they were kind of dismissing battery powered stuff and dismissing hybrids at that moment, and they were all in on hydrogen. So to me, it's a lesson of like, you want to have probably a few different bets on which way technology is going to go. And you know, GM, I don't know what they were doing for the last 16 years that Tesla was you know, designing all those cars and selling all those cars, but you know, it may have been going down that hydrogen dead end.
Do you have a hydrogen vehicle, Alex?
No, not yet.
All right, this has been great. We talked about cars, we talked about Clubhouse, we talked about new consulting firms. 2 things I want to mention. Alex and I worked on this innovation maturity model assessment that just went live on innovationleader.com. It's worth checking out. It takes less than 5 minutes to figure out where are you on the innovation journey and innovation sophistication. The other thing is our friends at Planbox just issued this thing called the Future Fit Manifesto. It's at futurefitmanifesto.org, and it's sort of a rethink, reinvention of the Agile Manifesto, which is now 20 years old. Thanks for watching. If you have important news items that we missed or stuff that we should be paying attention to, leave a comment or hit the like button or share this video, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Alex.